up, YouTube? It's your girl Tori Patrice, and I am back with another video. Today I'm going to be reviewing the first episode of season 6 of 90 Day Fiancé. This season, I believe all of the couples, if not most, are new, so they're all fresh faces to me. This first episode was an introduction to all the couples, how they met, what they do for a living, and how they got engaged. If you guys notice that my tongue is like a random color, it's because I've been eating pixie sticks, so don't mind that. But anyway, let's get straight into it. So the first couple we have is Anna and Mursel. So Anna is the American. I forget what state she's from, but Mursel is from Turkey, and they're both in their 30s. Anna has 3 kids. All sons, ranging from, the oldest was like 15, I believe the second child was 14, and the youngest was somewhere around 8. And Mursel has no children. They met on this online beekeeping group because they're both beekeepers, so they bonded over their common interest. He messaged her, and then from there they just started talking and video chatting and eventually dating. From what she described, it kind of seemed like they hadn't been talking that long, and then he just kind of randomly proposed to her over video chat, and she said yes, which is pretty... But if we know anything about 90 Day Fiancé, none of the people on this show really think their decisions through, so I guess it shouldn't be a surprise at this point. But anyway, so they're engaged, and he is Muslim, and he doesn't believe in drinking alcohol. She likes to drink, but from what she said, he, I guess, is sort of okay with her drinking and just wants to be around when she is consuming alcohol. But from what I saw, it's not like it doesn't seem like she has a drinking problem or anything. She seems like a pretty normal person, besides the fact that she wants to bring over someone she barely knows into the home with her children. But anyway, yeah, but he kind of seemed strange to me. I mean, the whole relationship seems strange because his English is really limited and their conversations are very basic and limited. So I'm really not understanding what has kept her hooked or interested in this relationship, because in a long distance relationship, 95% of your relationship is based on how meaningful your conversations are, and I don't see how they're having meaningful conversations. But she says that they do use a translator over the internet, but you can see how awkward and like how many pauses there are during their video chat conversations, so it just seems really off to me. But nevertheless, on this episode, Mursel flies to America to be with Anna. He is approved for his K1 visa, and she goes to pick him up from the airport, and like he immediately runs up to her and he's all excited and he hugs her. And at the airport, like, there's this random guy that walks up to them, and Mursel introduces the guy to Anna, and she's like, who is this? And Mursel doesn't know how to communicate to her who he is, so the guy's like, oh, we just met on the plane. And it was just like this awkward moment because, again, Mursel is still learning English, so he didn't really know how to explain to her who the random guy was, and he was just standing there, and it was just this whole thing. But anyway, so after that awkward exchange, they go to a hotel because she is not going to bring him to her house on the very first night. I guess she wants to spend some alone time with him before she takes him home, where he will meet her 3 sons. So anyway, they get to the hotel, and again, it's kind of like this basic conversation, and she's like, do you have pajamas? And he just stares at her. He's like just staring because he doesn't know the word pajamas. So she's like, pajamas, and he just stares at her, and then I guess she just drops the subject and they start kissing or whatever, and that was pretty much all there was for the Anna and Mursel segment, besides the fact that it also showed Anna talking to her friend before Mursel came. She was just talking to her friend about what was going to happen, and basically just they were just discussing their relationship, and her friend was kind of like, this kind of seems like a really spontaneous decision, but what can you do? Like, your friend's gonna do whatever she wants to do. So yeah, like I said, it ended with them at the hotel. So next couple we have is Michael and Juliana. Michael is a wealthy 42-year-old white man and I think he's just kind of looking for someone to spend some cash on, because he found him a pretty young model. She's about 20 or 22, and she is from Brazil. I'm looking at my notes if you see me looking over here, because I wrote down things about the couples. Anyway, so she's from Brazil, and he was basically describing their relationship as this like deep relationship. He says that they're kindred spirits. It's not all about her looks for him, and basically you can tell he's head over heels for this girl. Now, we didn't hear anything from Juliana on this episode, so I can't really tell if her feelings are genuine, but I personally don't believe that they are, because he also states that he gave her access to his credit card information, and he's agreed to financially support her. I mean, which he's gonna have to financially support her anyway if she gets approved for her K1 visa and comes over to the United States. But I just thought it was kind of odd that she already has access to his credit card information, and I hope he's not being used, but we will see. I guess once we meet Juliana, we'll be able to like get a feel for her character, but right now I kind of feel like she might not have looked his way if he didn't have the funds that he had, but he seems like a nice man. He has 2 children who seem to be like really aware and smart. And even though he is divorced from his ex-wife, who is also his children's mother, they still have a really good relationship, like they're best friends. And so the kids very much have a very active co-parenting environment. They live in separate households, but the interesting thing is he recently bought a house that's pretty close to his ex-wife's house. And he doesn't know how Juliana's going to feel about that, but it's good for the kids because, they can practically like walk back and forth from mom and dad's house, Basically on this episode, he was talking about how he's going to be flying to Brazil pretty soon in order to be with Juliana before she goes and does her interview for the K1 visa, hopefully getting approved and all that. And he spoke to his ex-wife, and she was basically asking him like, how does he think that Juliana's gonna adjust to kind of like being kind of thrown into the stepmother role when she comes, like how's she going to respond to having the children around, because he's only ever spent time with her in Brazil alone, so she hasn't met his children. And as I've stated before, she's like 20 or 22, so she's young and she doesn't have any children of her own. So yeah, and Michael was just saying like, well, I of course don't expect her to like take over your role, but he doesn't know how she's gonna respond to like the children and how they're going to interact with each other and how that whole dynamic is going to work. And even the son was like, she's only 12 years older than me, so she's closer to our age than she is to you. And it was kind of funny, but yeah, so that was all that happened with Michael and Juliana. We haven't heard Juliana speak. We don't really know much about her besides the fact that she had a rough childhood or upbringing, and then she got discovered as a model, and she's working on her modeling career, and now she's engaged to Michael, who is financially supporting her. So that's all we know. And I guess she also has funds from the modeling gigs that she does. I guess we haven't heard anything from her. So yeah, but she's very beautiful, and on the next episode, I guess he'll be flying to Brazil to be with her, doing her interview process. So yeah. All right. So the next couple we have is Tania and Syngin. So anyway, Tania is 29 and Syngin is somewhere around that age. They're not far apart in age. Maybe he's 32 or so. And Tania is the American, and Syngin is from South Africa. I forget what Tania's occupation is, but I know she is very politically active. She does protest. Anyway, the story of how they met is rather interesting. Tania was actually single for 6 years, and she was talking to this guy, and he flew her out.
You flew out, all expenses is paid for.
To South Africa to meet him. And so while on the trip, she said that things didn't work out with the guy. She, discovered that he was a jerk. So she ended up leaving him, and she was still in South Africa, and she went out to a bar that night, and she ended up meeting Syngin, and they hit it off right off the bat, and they just started hanging out all the time after that. She ended up actually staying in South Africa for 2 months with him. And eventually, when she went back to the States, she kept in contact with him. They kept their relationship going, and now they are engaged. He is approved for the K-1 visa, and he did come to America to be with her on this episode. But first, I want to give you guys some background on how Tania has kind of had to shift things around in her life since starting this relationship with Syngin. So she was living on her own, but since she is now preparing to bring Syngin over to the States, she wants to be able to save money in order for them to get their own house and everything. So she moved back in with her mom. Basically, she plans on staying in the shed at her mom's house with Syngin. So they won't be exactly inside the house, but they'll still be, within that household. That's a pretty big sacrifice, She knows she's going to have to save up and be able to support him because, they can't work at first when they come to the United States. So in this episode, it shows her getting ready for Syngin's arrival. It shows her in an adult store, if you know what I'm saying. And she's picking out little toys and things for Syngin's arrival. And after that, I guess the next day or a couple days later, he's flying in. So she rents a hotel room for her and Syngin to go to. And she calls her friends over because she wants them to go to the airport with her to pick him up, which I thought was kind of extra in my opinion, because I just feel like it's more special if the person goes to the airport to pick up their significant other alone, and then they can have that special moment between them two, and then he can meet her friends later on. But, to each his own. So her friends ride with her to the airport, and, she didn't know what she was going to be wearing to the airport, so she was kind of taking a while, and it seems like she's going to be late because while she's in the cab with her friends, she gets a text or a notification letting her know that Syngin's plane has arrived. So she's like freaking out, and it basically ends there. We don't get to the airport yet, to the point where they're going to meet. So it left off there. So on next episode, we'll find out how late she is and how everything works out and how the night goes when they get back to the hotel and all that extra stuff. So yeah, that's where it ended with them. So the next couple we have is Emily and Sasha. I believe Emily is about 28 and Sasha is 32. So Emily was from Oregon, Sasha is from Russia. Now, Emily has been living in Russia for the past 3 years because she is an ESL teacher. For those of you who don't know what an ESL teacher is, it's just an English teacher who teaches English as a second language. So, she's been teaching English in Russia, and she was lonely, making the move from Oregon to Russia. So she decided to join a gym where she met Sasha, who is a fitness trainer. They started hanging out, they clicked. She said that he was very interested in her life and everything because he had never met an American before her. So they start dating, and she is pregnant. She's actually due to have the baby in 4 days. And we get some background about Sasha because Sasha's got a history, apparently. He's been married twice, and both of his ex-wives have a child for him. So he has 2 children and 2 baby mamas, okay? And Emily, she seems a little bit naive. Emily comes out the gate kind of defending her relationship, and she's like, yeah, he's been married twice, but our relationship is different. And she even, guys, I quote, she even says, our relationship is perfect. And I'm like, girl, ain't nobody's relationship perfect. So I'm already kind of side-eyeing her. But anyway, on this episode, it showed her and Sasha going to shop for stuff like toys and things for the baby with one of Sasha's sons from his previous marriage. And Emily stated that his ex-wife only allows her to see his son on holidays, and she was disheartened by that because from what she can see, he's a great father, and she wishes he could be given a chance to spend more time with his child. And she was just basically saying how she knows he's going to be a great father to their child. And then there was another scene where Emily was in a cafe and she video chats her sister back home in Oregon. And her sister was being really pessimistic. The sister was like, this guy's been married twice. Like, how do you know you're going to be any different? And, like, we don't really know this guy. I mean, they're all valid points. But I feel like at this point, she's pregnant, and it's kind of like what's done is done. She's about to have a child with this man, so all you can do is try to help and be supportive of your sister in whatever ways you can. Of course, give her your thoughts and your wisdom, but what's done is done. Like, she's about to have the baby in 4 days. And what bothered me was when her sister goes on to say, why do you want to have the baby in Russia? Why wouldn't you want to have it in an American hospital where the nurses are going to be able to understand English and know what you're saying? Which, again, it's valid. But she is going to have the baby in 4 days. And at this point, there's nothing that she can do. Like, she can't get on a flight this late in her pregnancy. So she's going to have the baby in Russia, and you basically putting all these fears in her head that the nurses aren't going to be able to understand what she's saying, and X, Y, and Z is not helping the situation. You're only adding stress to a pregnancy that's probably already stressful for her. This is her first child. She's having the baby in a foreign country without her family. So it's already a stressful situation. So I feel like the sister was being really insensitive, and it was just kind of a little too late for you to be pointing out all these red flags and trying to give her advice at this point when she's about to have the baby in 4 days. She's gonna have to have the baby in Russia, so there's no point in you asking her why she wants to have the baby in Russia. It's done. Like, it's a done deal. Just be supportive and, try to make sure she has everything that she needs. But anyway, so after this conversation with her sister, you could tell that Emily was kind of like getting really anxious, and she started to get a headache. So she calls Sasha, and he comes over right away. He comes to the cafe to comfort her, and it was really cute. And I was like, oh, he's being, really supportive, and she was feeling better with him there. And that was where it ended with Emily and Sasha. So the final couple that we have is Robert and Anny. Robert is a 41-year-old. He's from New York, but he is currently residing in Florida. He has a young son, and he is engaged to 30-year-old Anny from the Dominican Republic, whom he met on Facebook. It's clear that Anny's looks and body is what attracted Robert to her, but nevertheless, I guess they have some sort of connection, but it seems to be more physical. But anyway, they've only met one time in person, and that was because he took a cruise that stopped in the Dominican Republic, and it stopped in the DR for 8 hours. So he only spent 8 hours with her, and he proposed during that 8 hours. He was ready to lock her down, okay? She, of course, accepted his proposal, and she was approved for the K1 visa, so she will be coming to America soon. I can already see that there's going to be a strain in their relationship because he seems to have a hyperactive son. His son's name is Bryson, and Anny has no children. I believe that it's going to be quite of an adjustment for her, you know, being thrust into the stepmother role, especially given the fact that Robert is an Uber driver. So with that being said, he needs Anny to be able to, you know, get Bryson ready for school and, you know, basically take on a full-time parent role with him being out a lot. This is how he makes a living. He's driving people around a lot, so he really needs her to play that stepmom role. And I could already see that when they were on video chat. Bryson's kind of like really energetic, hyperactive behavior was kind of like a little bit nerve-wracking to her. And Robert asks her, "Are you ready for this?" And she's like, "Oh, he's a little cuckoo for me." Like, she literally made a joke calling his son cuckoo. So I think that's going to be a real challenge for them. And then it seems like she's going to be a little bit demanding with the money, because when they were on video chat, I also noticed that the first thing that she says she wants when she gets to America was an iPhone. She was like, "When I get to America, you're gonna buy me an iPhone, right?" No. And then also on top of that, he sent her money in order for her to get things that she needs, you know, before she makes the trip to America. And I guess for some reason there was an ID issue with her picking up the money order. So she couldn't get the money, and she sent him like all these angry face emojis. I mean, just angry emoji, angry emoji, angry emoji, like just down, all down his phone screen in his text messages. And he was like, you know, "Why are you angry with me? Like, I sent the money." And she was like, "No, there is no money. I didn't get any money." And she was just kind of like going off about it. And he's like, "Well, I sent the money." And he had just left the store from getting her lingerie, which was more so a gift for himself. But he says that, you know, he wants to make her feel special when she comes to America. So he got her some lingerie, and then as soon as he left the store, that's when he got bombarded with all the angry face emojis. And it pretty much ended with that argument. So that was all for the Anny and what's his name? Robert. That was all for the Anny and Robert segment. So we will see how this goes down when Anny finally gets to the US. From what I saw on the preview for next week, it seems like Anny was looking forward to being romantic and getting some alone time with Robert, but it doesn't seem like with Bryson that's gonna happen on the first night. So we'll see how she responds. I will keep you guys updated this season. So make sure you guys like and subscribe. Comment down below your thoughts on this week's episode and what your predictions are for these couples. Until next time, see ya.